You are listening to Zimbabwe News. Keep listening to Zimbabwe News.
Becomes the first and only nation to use atomic weaponry during wartime when it drops an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. Approximately 80,000 people died and were killed during the result of the blast, and another 35,000 were injured, and at least 60,000 would be dead by the end of the year from effects of the fallout. Now, though the dropping of the atomic bomb on Japan marked the end of the Second World War, many historians argue that it also ignited the Cold War.
All right, so I can see some of the visuals there. I think if TD could just show them, there was just there were some visuals there that I'm just hoping our TD could show them of the memorial that's actually taking place right now. I think this was This is the commemoration of the Hiroshima bomb.
Yes.
There's some visuals I was hoping that she's going to show where you can see the victims. Ooh, but anyway, but that's, oof. It was a bit of a scary time back in the day, isn't it? But anyway, all right, we move on with our trivia this morning. Prometheus, the world's oldest tree, aged at least 4,862 years old, is accidentally cut down in Nevada, USA on this day in 1964. Now, the cutting down of a bristlecone called the Prometheus tree brought the species to the world's attention in 1965. The tree's death sparked a worldwide reaction and was instrumental in the creation of the Great Basin National Park. Now, only after the bristlecone had been felled did the scientists and Forest Service discover that they had killed that what they had killed was the then world's oldest known living thing. Man.
For all you tree lovers there, I'm sure that time must have been a very difficult one. But extending further, in that time in 1966, Muhammad Ali knocks out English boxer Brian London in the third round at Earl's Court in London to retain his undisputed world heavyweight title. Now, the match took place at Earl's Court Arena, London, England, on August the 6th, 1966. It was scheduled for 15 rounds. The match ended in the third round with Ali defeating London by knockout.
I can imagine. I mean, look, I love boxing, and you have to love the way Muhammad Ali just used to spring around.
Look like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, old man, rumble.
It was quick with that right hook there. All right, so that's all for your boxing lovers. All right, in 2006, Tiger Woods, aged 30, becomes the world's youngest player to compile 50 PGA Tour wins with a 3-stroke victory over Jim Furyk in the Buick Open at Grand Blanc in Michigan. Wow.
You know what Tiger Woods' name is in Zimbabwe? To get him sango.
Oh, to get him sango. All right, yeah, maybe. He's our relative, isn't it?
Now look at our final trivia story today. Geraldine Estelle Horner, Jerry Halliwell, as was an English singer, songwriter, author, actress, and philanthropist. She rose to prominence in the 1990s as Ginger Spice. Zaza, keep quiet. A member of the pop girl group Spice Girls, with over 90 million records sold worldwide. The group became the best-selling female group of all time. Yes, I did say
but I love the Spice Girls. I'm from that era. If you want to be my lover. You see, that was our time. I was a teeny bopper there and enjoying.
Most definitely. All right, that wraps up our trivia for the morning. It's time to get straight into our early morning news.
Once again, it's a very good morning and welcome to Early Morning News. In our top story this morning, President Emmerson Mnangagwa says the country has no intention of letting go its hard-won independence and has urged Zimbabweans to remain united in defending the gains of the liberation struggle. The president was speaking at the launch of his biography at the State House in Harare yesterday. The book is about the president's life, details the hopes, aspirations and sacrifice in the face of death and betrayal, and ultimately victory and forgiveness. Let's hear the president speak.
Our independence needed to be secured, a task which preoccupied me and many of my colleagues, some of whom are here today. They are my comrades in arms, Shamari Zeropa, dating back to the liberation struggle. The bond never falters, indeed defies time and circumstances. Today we are a free country inhabited by a free, united and sovereign people enjoying self-government. We have no intention whatsoever of letting go of our hard-won independence. Zimbabwe shall forever remain a free, sovereign African country. We shall never betray this national ethos. Hence the launch of this book a few days before we commemorate our National Heroes Day as a sacred pledge and reminder of our unflinching loyalty to our motherland. As I share reflections on my life, I do so against a backdrop of unprecedented national achievements we continue to register as a nation. Visible milestones have been covered in modernizing and expanding our infrastructure, key nodes in recovering our economy and placing it on a pedestal for durable, inclusive growth have been achieved. We continue to engage and re-engage within the Committee of Nations, building comprehensive friendships and strategic partnerships. Our politics, by and large, are converging, all the time deepening our democracy. We thus continue to build our nation together as one people, as Zimbabweans. That cell, during our time, was called A20, Butcher House, A20 room. That's where, if you're captured, you go in that cell, they, like those hooks, like in a butchery, they hang you head down, legs up on those hooks. Then you are hit from one end, and the rails take you to the other end. Then there's somebody else this way who hits you, and that way, that's the torture. But I know it isn't there anymore. This is a democratic government.
Now then, looking at our next story, a veteran broadcaster, Sam Kitiga, who succumbed to COVID-19 related complications on Friday last week, has been buried at his rural home in Lower Gweru.
Mkitika, who was 67, died at a Bulawayo hospital after battling the COVID-19 pandemic for a week. The late broadcaster joined the then Rhodesia Broadcasting Corporation, now ZBC, in 1979 and rose to become manager radio services, a position he held until he left the national broadcaster in 2015. Friends and relatives described Mkitiga as a humble man whose gap would be difficult to fill.
Ubaba ube umuntu onothando, umuntu othanda abantu. He always put others before himself. He was a very selfless man. Silapha mina umkhwenyana wakomkhithiya silahlekile kakhulu. I never did myself as umkhwenyana but as indodana yalapha ekhaya ngoba wangenza ngafila ngalolo hlobo. Uzohlala enhlizweni zethu njalo uzohlala simkhumbula.
Indoda le ibindoda engazondiyo. Indoda ebithanda ukuhlala ixoxa. Ibilokuyizinto okuhle even lasesigabeni esokuphonga ukriticize enye into abantu ngangithi kwesinsikhathi ngihleli mhlawumbe uzwe abantu becriticize uhlelo kwesinsikhathi becriticize uhlelo lukahulumende uzwe sithi kona hayi akunjalo bantu abamnyama ake lifunde ukuthi kona into eqhakathekileyo empilweni ukuthi kona sime singabantu abamnyama sikwazi ukuthi kuyini okwalwela leli lizwe.
On radio, Mkitika presented various programs including Ukubingelelana, Yazini Umthetho, Radio Doctor, and Izihlahla Zakiti. He is survived by his wife Grace, 5 children and 8 grandchildren. Tafaraj Kumira, ZBC News, Lower Gweru.
Sithilala ngokuthula baba Sempoqo Mkitiga. The Zimbabwe Defense Forces, ZDF, has handed over classroom blocks at Charleswood Primary School in Chimanimani as part of the Army's Community Assistance Week.
One of the schools affected by the Cyclone Idai disaster of 2019, Chowsud Primary School in Chimanimani, is celebrating the construction of 2 classroom blocks thanks to the joint efforts of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, ZDF, and the local bank. Officially handing over the classroom blocks this Thursday, Defense and War Veterans Affairs Minister Honorable Opamchinguri Kashiri, represented by Commander 3 Infantry Brigade, Brigadier General George Chitwa, said the project is testimony of the relationship between armed forces and the public.
The Zimbabwe Defense Forces Community Assistance Week is an annual event whereby the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, in consultation with the local communities and other stakeholders, hand over completed projects. Such projects include the construction of basic social amenities like bridges, clinics, schools, and other infrastructure to support government efforts towards economic and social development.
The local community has welcomed the development for enhancing the delivery of quality education in line with government's thrust to modernize schools infrastructure consistent with Vision 2030.
Chiitiko chatunganidza nhasi panapa ichi chinotiratidza kuti tiri kukoshesa kuvapo kwezvivakwa yatinoti infrastructure, kuti mwana akabva kumba achiuya kuchikoro tirimo mu-education tinototi home away from home.
Izvozvi taakuchiona kuti for sure mutungamiriri wedu wenyika ari serious nebudiriro yekumaruwa, nekuti standard kana kuti zvimiro mavakirwo akaitwa mablocks 2 aya tinoona kuti ari up to date uye anotaridza kuti zvikoro zvemumadhorobha nezvekumaruzevha zvafanana.
Mamwe mablocks etinomboona kana atakatodzidzirawo isusu takamira pano anga akaita mazongororo, asi taisamzuva ranhasi tine mabloko akanaka anotidzivirira even kana kunjodzi dzinotiwana kuno kuchimanimani.
Chimanimani District Assistant Development Coordinator Mr. Taona Ningomasha thanked the Zimbabwe Defense Forces and gave an update on the progress made so far at West End Farm, where Cyclone Idai internally displaced survivors will be relocated to.
Right now, the first phase, looking at 50 houses, is complete. And then second phase and third phase is looking at again about 50 houses. And there are these houses are at various stages of completion. As a district, we hope that before the onset of the rain season, these houses will be complete.
The ZDF Community Assistance Week is observed every year ahead of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces Day. Tamuka Charakupa, ZBC News, Chimanimani.
That story brings us to the end of our early morning news. Now we get into our Heroes Day feature. As we celebrate Heroes Month, we take you on a journey through the late Vice President Simon Vengai Mzenda, a Liberation War hero who was popularly known as Dr. Mzi in the political spheres and also a glorified poet. He was born in Gutu, Rhodesia, 28 October 1922. At the age of 23, he left Rhodesia to train as a carpenter in South Africa, and in the 1953, Mzenda entered the political arena. Joining the ultra-conservative and white established approved British African and National Voice Association as its Secretary General, Simon Mzenda was one of the old guard who helped bring Robert Mugabe to power in 1980. He stayed active in political activism and eventually became Administrative Secretary of the Zimbabwe African National Union, ZANU, attracting the attention of Rhodesian security forces and being imprisoned in Salisbury Central Prison for 2 years, which he described as a place of study. Simon Mzenda became the Deputy Prime Minister of Zimbabwe from 1980 to 1988, Minister of Foreign Affairs from 1980 to 1981, Minister of Energy and Water Resources from 1984 to 1985, and Vice President from 1988 to 2003. Mzenda died on the 20th of September 2003 at Parenyatwa Group of Hospitals following a prolonged battle with a kidney ailment. Now I'll play for you one of his favorite poems that he loved to deliver.
Ndakanamatisa vanhu parali yataita ngati ngavasimudze maoko vakadayo. Zvino ndakarisa kuti nehanda nyakasikana kokuti akozwa rini kwezwa nyaya tichitambudzika mweya unoera kokuti akozwa rini kwezwa nyaya tichidzvinyirirwa koinga taneta wani nokunwa misozi totirira kudzamari kuve riniko inga nguva panguva yechando inga miti panguva yechando inozorodza inokuumuka mashizha yombwana rudekaro kwozoti nokuchera kwokunze edombe ramashizha ndowavo nenenhere inoyevedza shiri nemhuka nenyuchi zvokwezwa nohwema kwaisuru gari chatisvikira riniko vana vacheche vatinobereka vakati paiweza masimba nhasi vakura vakatutumwara munyika yakwavo vochaya paangararamira nokuzvidekadza apa napapo paziri ufuse makumbo avo ava namatuzi nokungobviswa neripoti rakasvika munyika kovosvike piko pfuma yenyika nhasi vakatora vakagovana paukama hwavo yepfumo jena nhasi vari kudya mafuta ayo nyika isi tiri kudya nhoko dzezvironda nhasi vagere murusununguko isi tigere murushambwa konai muyani handatosvika kupi.
The legendary Dr. Z. I used to love his poetry.
Yeah.
He used to say it with such passion.
Yeah.
And this is celebrating our heroes. It is Heroes Weekend this weekend. It's a long weekend, and we just want to take time to reflect on some of the contributions that our heroes have made for us as a country.
Most definitely. Coming up next, we're going to get into our press review, and we'll be looking at a few of other headlines in the local press. Some of those are looking at Forex earnings and the defying of COVID-19, along with the president's book selling up to 50,000 copies. And as per usual, we always do implore you to buy the paper.
Absolutely. This is just a snippet of the headlines, but please do go out there and support our local press. Go and buy the actual newspapers. Press review coming up next.
Take a look at our first story coming from the Herald. Headline reads, Forex earnings defy COVID-19. Story by senior business reporter Golden Sibanda. Now, Zimbabwe's foreign currency earnings defied the disruptive negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic to register a 29% growth to $4 billion in the first 6 months of this year, compared to a $3.2 billion achieved in the same period last year, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe said yesterday. Now, this comes as the central bank also said that it was working on the Deposit Protection Corporation to explore ways of protecting foreign currency deposits held by banks to give the institutions comfort to lend to the protective sector. Zaza, our next story there.
All right, we are still with the Herald, and this is a story that's coming from senior reporter Farirai Machivenyika, and the headline reads, President book sells 50,000 copies on launch, biography reveals sacrifice, betrayal and aspirations. Now, more than 50,000 copies of the President Mnangagwa's biography that details the liberation struggle, his sacrifice, the betrayal by fellow comrades, hopes and aspirations were snapped up yesterday as the Zimbabweans sought to get insight into the life of their liberators. Titled A Life of Sacrifice, a biography of Emerson Mnangagwa. The book that was written by former Bulawayo South legislator Mr. Eddie Cross and published by Jarak Media, who were represented by Mrs. Rachel Jambaya, offers some heart-wrenching excerpts of betrayal that the president suffered from his own. Farai, we are still with the Herald this morning. Yeah. What can we expect?
Look at the more headlines. It reads, armed robbers from South Africa injured in police shootout. Story from our crime reporter there. Now, for four habitual armed robbers operating from South Africa and strongly suspected to being behind a spate of robberies in Zimbabwe targeting cash were on Wednesday night seriously injured following a shootout with the police crack team after being cornered in Harare's Highfield suburb. Abel Marufu Mukandawire, 40 years old, and Francis Azangure, 46 years old, and Blessing Gamanya, 32 years old, and Edmo Maruizi, 44 years old, are now in hospital under heavy police guard. Grave concerns there in that particular area. But now we're going to be moving over to Bulawayo's B Metro. Zaza.
All right, so we've got a story from the B Metro, a little bit on the concerning side as well. And what's happening with these stories today? There's just a whole lot of concerning stories. Now, a man who this is a story by Danisa Masugu, and the headline reads: Man runs amok, beats wife, and stabs pal. A man who had visited his wife A man who had visited his friend with his wife caused a scene at his friend's house, and as he ran berserk and beat his wife over an undisclosed issue and stabbed a man who tried to restrain him from further assaulting his wife. The dramatic incident happened on Sunday at around 8 p.m. in Hillcrest suburb, and it lasted for about 15 minutes. Lord have mercy. What is happening with all these abuse cases?
Well, it doesn't end there. It seems to extend from male to female now, as the next headline reads, Wife beats hubby up for cheating claims. Story also by Danisa Masugu in the B Metro. Now, a man from Popoma suburb had to ask the law to help him after his wife turned him into a punching bag for allegedly bringing his girlfriend to their matrimonial home and sleeping with them on their bed while she was away. Daniels Dube, 45 years old, has faced a tough time at the hands of his abusive wife, Nogutaba Moyo, who is 27 years old, who always beats him whenever he returns from buying her clothing from South Africa or Mozambique. Domestic violence, gender-based violence, either way is not acceptable. And we do implore you to ensure that you do find ways to manage those circumstances. Moving on to the Newsday, Zaza.
Absolutely, Farai. In the Newsday, this is a story by Winston Antonio, and the headline reads, Zim Uganda filmmakers join forces. Now, a partnership between the National Arts Council of Zimbabwe and Piton International Film Festival, PIFF, for the inaugural NACZ PIFF Africa 2021 film festival has given birth to a film production by local and a Ugandan production house. Now, Bulawayo-based Gesh 23 Productions has teamed up with Uganda's King Paul Media Group, KPMG, to produce a short film titled Find Me. Right, Farai, we're still with the Newsday. What other stories do we have this morning?
Going to our last story on the back page, Maswani said likely to snub Warriors, reads the headline story by Kevin Mapasure. Now, English Premier League side Leicester City hotshot.
Good morning, Zimbabwe, wherever you are, whether in Zimbabwe or in the diaspora, we would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, our Facebook page is ZBC News Online, and we would love to hear your plans for Heroes Weekend. What are your plans? What's happening today? It is a Fiesta Farai Friday right here on Good Morning Zimbabwe. Farai, what are we getting into now?
Well, definitely enjoying our Tanganda tea at the moment, but we'll be looking at our business breakfast coming up shortly as we look at the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe's monetary policy and the iron and steel industry revival. Business breakfast coming up next.
It's time for Business Breakfast, and in our top story there, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe's midterm monetary policy review has sought to build on the recently reviewed budget by contributing towards the attainment of a 7.8 GDP growth this year.
Zimbabwe's economic challenges partly emanated from the discord between the monetary and fiscal policies, two key anchors of any economy which were not speaking to each other. Last week, Finance and Economic Development Minister Professor Mthuli Ncube reviewed the 2021 national budget, which showed that the country's plans in managing its finances are within the set targets. This Thursday, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, RBZ, followed suit in presenting the mid-term monetary policy review, which targets containing inflation and achieving GDP growth.
So overall, the economy is on the right track. It is rebounding and the outlook is positive, and this is on account of the remarkable hawkish monetary policy stance being pursued by the bank, which is a restrictive stance. And when you look at how we have performed in respect of our monetary targeting framework, and we publish these figures on a week-on-week basis, so we have done well with reserve money growth being contained well within our targets in terms of our monetary targeting framework, and this money supply has remained within growth enhancing levels to sustain the growth trajectory of the economy, but also within inflation neutral levels.
The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe is also resolved to deal with the increasing participation by industry players on the foreign currency auction system by clearing the backlog of unprocessed payments, as well as reducing the gap between the official exchange rate of 85.7 and the parallel market rate. Owen Mandova, ZBC News, Harare.
Look at our next story today in our Business of Breakfast. The government's directive to ban chrome exports has been described as a huge step towards reviving the country's iron and steel industry, which has the cog of the strong economy.
Zimbabwe's strong economic foundation after independence was based on its iron and steel industry, which created robust industrial value chains linking mining, manufacturing, construction, and transport sectors before its fortunes waned. The announcement by Fortune 500 listed Chinese steel giant Qingyangxi Group to build the largest iron and steel plant in Zimbabwe signaled the country's openness for foreign investment aimed at reviving the iron and steel industry. Government has since followed up with policy measures to support that, and Cabinet's decision to ban raw chrome exports has been described as a commitment to re-industrialize the economy.
They are quite a credible investor. They are a game changer. And that is what we need in Zimbabwe. If you look at Ethiopia in particular as an example, they have turned themselves around the textile sector to be a powerhouse in Africa, and they're exporting to Europe and America. But they took a game changer from China.
Value addition and beneficiation are the key components of the National Development Strategy 1 in terms of maximizing export earnings and job creation. Hence, the ban directive is viewed by the Industry and Commerce Ministry as key in achieving those goals.
Development clearly shows what the President has asked us to do, to implement the National Development Strategy and bring local production. In doing so, there is employment, economic growth, reduction in poverty.
The proximity of Qingyangxi to key suppliers in the area is also a huge
by the price fluctuations.
Bakassi internally displaced persons camp, Maiduguri, northeast Nigeria. The prices of cereals at Ali Kolomi's stall have skyrocketed in recent months, putting them out of reach of the victims of Boko Haram's insurgency. People have had to dig deeper into their pockets to buy food as inflation in Nigeria soars. Initially, the business was enjoyable because the product was very cheap to buy. Nowadays, the price of the product is escalating and it has become expensive. There's no money and people are running out of cash. You have to put the needs of other people before your own. Everyone is out of cash and the price of each product has increased now. Asha Umar turned to trading in livestock after a power outage crippled her ice vending business. She says she's had to use some of her 200,000 naira grant from the Red Cross to feed her children. Life is like that. I don't get any help. The children only rely on me to make the capital, although it's only 200,000 naira. The money has started to reduce since I have to pay the bills, education, health, and clothes. One of my children got sick. I spent 50,000 naira on her alone. More than 2 million displaced people have been affected by the price increases. The inflation rate reached a 4-year record high of 18% in March this year, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Nearly 85 million Nigerians live below the poverty line.
In a spirit of camaraderie and togetherness, the SADC ground and naval forces have arrived in Mozambique's troubled northern province as part of a combined regional force to quell insurgents who have caused much suffering and whose presence in a member state presents a threat to the whole region.
South African troops have arrived in Mozambique's troubled northern province as part of a combined regional force to quell insurgents who have caused much suffering and whose presence in the member state presents a threat to the whole region. The Southern African Development Community SADC bloc is rallying behind neighboring Mozambique to deal with the country's insurgent crisis. On Wednesday, the South African National Defence Force SNDF showed its presence in the Indian Ocean heading to the Cabo Delgado province. On its part, Zimbabwe sent a team of 304 defence instructors.
All right, look at our next story. COVID-19 has left thousands of people unemployed and homeless in Bangladesh. Several charities are struggling to stay open as people feel exhausted over the pandemic and the extended restrictions. Let's get more on that story.
This is one of the few food charities still operating on the streets of Dhaka. In a day, it will feed more than 2,000 people, many unemployed because of COVID-19. They include security guards, drivers, and domestic workers. And among the group, there's also more homeless children.
You can tell to the adults that there's no food, but how can you tell that to little children? Over the last year and a half, kids who come here, they've become our family.
Charities like Memankana depend on donations. When Bangladesh first shut down because of the pandemic last year, there were hundreds of volunteer groups. But coronavirus fatigue has set in, and people are now less willing to donate. Not everyone here is without a job, but many have seen their earnings slashed to little over $1 a day.
I'm a poor man. For months I've been suffering the effects of lockdowns. There is barely any income. That's why I come here to eat without guilt.
As the Delta variant fuels a surge in infections, some people have had to leave their jobs and take care of their sick relatives. Many businesses, schools, and government offices have shut down, and hundreds of thousands of people are now unemployed. Around 4.5 million people in Bangladesh work in the textile industry, but COVID-19 has forced many factories to close. While the government has allowed some to reopen, a full recovery seems a long way off. For workers, there's some hope, but they don't know how long it will last.
Here we can eat without worrying about the next day. Before I knew about this place, I spent 2 days lying inside a parked bus, literally starving.
Many are left wandering the streets of the Bangladeshi capital, hoping charities like these can provide what's often their only meal of the day.
Well, that's all we had for you in terms of regional and international news. Coming up next, that time that everyone always looks forward to, it's the Gwindi. Yes, trending with Kurtley coming up.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. You are tuned into ZBC's Good Morning Zimbabwe with a special segment, Trending with Kurtley, where we keep it 100% all things trending. Whether locally, internationally, regionally, we always try our best to keep up with the trends. To begin our segment, my name is Kurtley Gwindi. I am your presenter for this particular segment, and I would like to give a special and gigantic, stupendous shout out just to about everybody who has been, trying their best to be on their phones, sending me, and also, through my own personal pages, keeping me up with the trends, because, sometimes I may miss something, but thanks to you, our fans and followers, I always am ready to come through every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with the latest and the hottest. Now, who remembers, Wake or Paida Moyo? And these are songs that were sang by Tanga Wekwasando, and if you remember, he was just amazing with his voice, his guitar, and the way he just brought out his lyrics. And we have some footage, exclusive footage, first to be seen here on Trending with Kurtley, where so big shout out to you, Zaza, and big shout out to everybody. Anzi, Kwamachi Pisa, all the other places, but Tanga Wekwasando says it better than me. Let's have a look.
Tamba Pafio Tino Tamba Pafio Tamba 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 Kutangane Mutanga Twenda Machipisa Kumastonze Pagwanzura Hey Gwanzura Ha Twenda Pamushanzi Saratoga Tanaka Paunyani Isema Shabini Bongo Ane muchechi macho Bongo